Hello friends, today I'm going to attempt to design and build a geocache that was commissioned to me from a customer on Etsy. They'd seen this online, thought it was really cool, and asked me if I felt like I could build it. So the concept is that there'll be an outer container with a smaller geocache inside. You will fill the geocache with water and the smaller container will rise up for you to retrieve the geocache. Then the water drains out and the geocache will recede back into the tube. It sounds pretty straightforward. So I guess the idea is, how big a hole do we need so that the water drains out in a reasonable and dependable manner, but so that it doesn't drain out so fast you're fighting to fill it up to get the geocache out. So we're gonna make a small hole because all it needs to do is drain a little bit for the geocache to be replaced back in and you can walk away. Now, one of the modifications I was asked to do is to put a cap on it so that animals and rubbish and rainwater and other stuff can't get into the tube when it's not being utilized. So what I'll do is we're gonna taper this top to make sure this doesn't become too tight, because people have a tendency to jam the cap on and then they can't get them off. Speaking of caps, the first thing to do is the cap off the bottom. So let's get started. I'm using medium gray PVC cement only because it's the most cost effective between the regular, medium, and heavy duty. It's the most cost effective. It's got the best price. It's actually cheaper than the regular, but a lot less expensive than the heavy duty. And since there'll be no real tugging or pressure or activity on this bottom cap, I don't see any need for heavy duty, but just a regular medium PVC cement. You can get it at Depot, Amazon. I'll provide a link in the description below. Appreciate it if you use it. So that's the bottom. Obviously that allows for filling with water without it coming out. The next thing to do is to make the hole. So we're gonna make the hole just at the bottom here. That way when you fill it with water, it slowly drains out. Not fast enough that it won't fill to get the tube out, but enough so that the water drains down. I'm gonna use a small drill bit and a drill press. That's it. That should be enough for the water to drain out and the geocache to fall back to the bottom. I'm a little concerned about debris getting in here and stopping it from draining, but with the cap on, that shouldn't be a problem, and somebody could always take a little stick and just kind of clean it out if need be. Next up is the top. I want to taper this down a little bit so that the cap slips on, but doesn't get terribly tight. There you go. I'm not sure if you can see it, but just added a little taper. That'll make the cap slide on much easier. Just cleaned it up a bit. Now it's nice and white. Looks awesome. Very excited. Okay, the next order of business is to make the floating cache inside. I'm gonna use a ratcheting PVC cutter. I'll leave a link in the description so you can get one for yourself. Now we're not really gonna go crazy with measurements here. I just wanna make it big enough to put a log in and small enough that it's light and floats very easily, but also long enough that it'll stick out a little bit, hopefully, when the tube fills up with water to get it out. So I'm gonna put the cap on gently, just to get a rough idea of how long it'll be. And we'll do a couple of inches. I'm just gonna guesstimate, but we're just gonna do a couple of inches. And there you go. Unlike a pipe cutter that you twist to cut, this ratcheting cutter, you just slowly squeeze it and it cuts right through. Now we have our floating cache container. It's bigger than I envisioned it in my head, but I kind of think it's just right. So the idea is that this cache will go in here, and when filled with water, it'll pop out. You can take the log out, fill it up, drop it back in. Can't get it out. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing as the larger tube. We're gonna put some PVC cement on the bottom of the tube. And then the top of the tube will be left with no cement, so it can be removed. I'll taper this a bit to make it easier to get on and off, but I do want this one to be snug so that water can't get in. There you go. It's tapered a bit so that it's not too tight, but it can be still pressed down far enough to be snug and waterproof. So there it is. This is the actual cache container. This will have the cache inside. I'm not going to paint this because it will be soaking in water. There's no real point, but I will put a little color on the cap just so people know which side to attempt to remove. I think a can cap, or just leave it on the can itself to hold this in place. And I think that should make it pretty clear which side to pull off. Okay, so the idea is to put this in the woods, maybe attach it to a tree or a log or something. So we want it to be a dark color to kind of blend in and not be like stand out like a sore thumb. So I'm gonna use deep forest and dark walnut for those colors. We're gonna do brown, and once it's dry, we'll do a little bit of the deep forest green over it. Looks pretty good. We'll let that dry, and then we'll do a little bit of the green over the brown just to give it some discoloration and help it, hopefully help it blend in a little bit more. Now I'll wait for it to dry. I'll touch up the section where the clamp is, of course. Put the cap on it and she'll be good to go. All right, so one of my concerns with this floating geocache is that it takes too much water to fill it up and push the geocache out. So I wanted to accomplish two things. One is to take up space within the tube, so it requires less water. Two was to have the geocache sit higher on the tube so that it doesn't have to float as far up to be retrieved. So I'm going to accomplish both of those things by putting in a smaller 1-inch pipe with caps on each end. So by taking this 1-inch pipe with caps on each end and sticking it inside this tube, it will take up volume within the tube, so the tube requires less water to fill, plus that long tube will begin to float up and reach the top a lot sooner than a smaller cache that's sitting all the way at the bottom. So this cache will sit on top of the other cache just a few inches down into the tube. Therefore, as you start to add water, that initial tube will float up much sooner, pushing the actual cache tube out. That's how we're going to go about doing it. So that's really it. That's the completed geocache. I'm gonna put this in here on top of the secondary tube, and then I'll put a painted cap on it, and it's complete. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna give this a test run. Here's our geocache container with the other geocache hidden inside. This is our tree. You can see it's blending in. So the idea is to remove the top and to dump a bunch of water into the geocache container. I'm gonna try to catch. Oh, it's peeing. There it is.
There it is. Oh, yes. Oh.
That was a little hard to do all at once, but you can see it came out.
Oh, that is great.
And now we're gonna put it back in, and it's gonna sink back to the bottom. And then all we would have to do
is let it pee.
All right, so here's a better angle at the floating geocache tube thingy. I think when people find this thing, their best bet is to cover the hole, almost like they're solving a puzzle when they fill it, so they don't lose all their water. Emmy's gonna fill it up here. Magic. There it is. And then when you put it back in, you let go of the hole, and it pees, and the geocache goes back down.
Woo!
And disappears into the tube.
That is so cool.
There it is, peeing. So the thing for them to figure out is that they need to do this to make it easier to retrieve it. Otherwise, they have to pour a lot of water real fast. And after it's done, the geocache sinks back down into the tube and waits for its next person. Super cool. So I think it's super cool. I can't wait to see it in action and to send it off to its new owner, where it will hopefully bring joy to cachers for many years to come. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want one, visit my Etsy store. Link in the description. Geocache, stop recording.